been pointed out recently in a number of sources in our community, but in the world at large, the history of how many Jews suffered, died from pogroms in Ukraine, Russia, Moldova, Romania. European soil is saturated with Jewish blood. Again and again, Jews tried to put together some kind of a minimal ghetto life. Those who assimilated fared even worse. But again and again it kept recurring. Posek tells us that according to Meshech Chochmah, that there's a graph in Golus of how Jews live and perform. Not that they have to do it that way, but that's what they tend to do. Lo ma'astem v'ugaltem l'chaloisom, I have not found you so abominable and despicable as to totally annihilate you. But it's always a kind of a spiritual brinkmanship, coming up to the edge and shocked, traumatized, when all else fails, that instrument that Avraham Avinu chose in the Bris Bein Absorim, better the suffering, Golus, rather than the alternative of Gehenna. Jews come to a place, they fulfill mitzvahs, it opens up a bracha, it creates in the environment and the atmosphere, it creates shefa, abundance, plentifulness. And we don't handle it well, invariably in history. That coupled with the embedded Jewish urgency to be machadash, to want to innovate. And the two come together, and the arrogance that comes with bounty, with abundance, and the chidush, the urgency to be machadish, takes Jewish imagination, says Rameir Simcha, and puts it at the service of the host country or divergent misapplications. Thinking that we're restricted. After Chasimas HaTalmud, the Ravina Rashi, there's a lid on how much we can be machadish. But the world has testified to it not being like that. That the worlds that are yet available for chidush are within these walls, and it's mimamakim. It's by going down more deeply. It's not the external limitation, because it's the neshama that has to be freed. And somehow, Am Yisrael continues to survive. We have suggested in the past that that's rooted in the bracha that Yaakov Avinu preparing Klal Yisrael now for this program. Tells Ephraim and Menashe in Golus, dressed like young Egyptian princes. And Yosef protests, no, but that's just an external. That's cosmetic. And the bracha he gives, Vayidgu larov bekel v'horetz, and we know the Midrashim that the fish are always shooting up to the top of the water for another drop, another burst of oxygen, though they're immersed in the water. Another chiddush. Strange phenomenon of history is how Jews survive. Doesn't make sense. All of the natural reasons that one would put forth should not have allowed for the continuity of Am Yisrael, and for our coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and for Botei Medrashim like this to be thriving and echoing with learning. One of the peculiar phenomena of nature is that the rivers, all in nature, something is, as it gets heated, it expands. As it gets colder, constricts. If that would be true of water, then all the lakes and rivers would freeze. All the fish would die. For some reason, they know how it works, chemically, the way the chromosomes line up, but why does that work? Water is the exception. Ice is an expansion as it gets colder. And that forms a lid on the top of the rivers and lakes and protects the fish underneath. They remain at normal temperatures and survive. There's a nest nista. But if it's in the right place at the right time, and that's the message of Purim, when things happen in the right sequence, in the right place, at the right time, it's kind of kitsch, puerile, to attribute it to randomness. It's foolishness. It's superficiality. It's a lack of mimamakim. Vayidgul Arov, Klal Yisrael is compared to the fish. That's the bracha Yaakov gives to his enigma in Golus. You're going to survive because of extraordinary hashgacha. And when you put the pieces together, the sequence of events, as the Some Sefer says, just read in some Kisisa, Rebbeinu Shalom is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, as achora, you'll see it from post facto, after the fact. But as Ponai, you won't understand it to begin with. But if you're alert, if you're aware, you see the hashgacha. There's a threat of the very lives for 25,000, 30,000 Jews in Ukraine running, dislocated, impossible conditions. But who are the people in the streets, the soldiers fighting? How many of them had grandfathers that participated in massacres of Jews? In Russia, in Moldova, Kishinev, Romanian soldiers that executed pogroms as they collaborated with the Nazis. It's an ace sorrow for Yisrael. It's an ace sorrow for the world. There's no kli that's machzik brocha like shalom. There is one author, b'diuk shalanu, but borderline, who pointed out that in Eov, when the Posek says, Eov is in his debate with his friends, his chavursas, trying to make him alert to hashgacha, that you have to see and listen. You have to pay attention. How many of us see without seeing, hear without listening? Says the Posek, Minishmas kel yiten korach. The breath of the Rebbeinu Shalom creates this. This is a special intervention for rochav mayim b'mutzot, and that the water expands and becomes solid. That's direct intervention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Already alluded to the Posek anticipating that this ness would be what will, in fact, a reflection, an anticipation, a guide by Yidgul Ohov, and Klal Yisrael will continue to survive. But each one of us, if we are zeicher to be in Eretz Yisrael, to be in a Beis Medrash, the achrayus, the responsibility to heighten the performance, not hysteria, b'simcha. Why b'simcha? How b'simcha? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom gave me kelim, gave me the tools with which to do what's incumbent upon me to do. And when Acheinu b'nei Yisrael are in such obvious, devastating circumstances, then it's my problem. collective unit, as the Kuzari says again and again, the collective unit of Klal Yisrael takes the upside and the downside and is invariably a single unit. Hashem Yitain that we should see Yeshua's Urefuas for Klal Yisrael in Ukraine and everywhere in the world. Amen.